Well, honestly, it started way before artificial intelligence. Even 25 years ago, it was already clear that education was mismatched with the needs of the world, be they the needs of life and society or the needs of business. And you can see this mismatch because, well, look at the problems we have today. There was a mismatch in terms of critical thinking and social media. There's a mismatch between ethics and how people behave in all sorts of governments. So that mismatch was already visible, but education, of course, is very slow at transforming itself. And it really didn't do much about it. When I wrote my first book, 21st Century Skills, that was in 2008. More than 100 countries decided to adopt that moniker and put some of that language in their documents, in their education documents, but really nothing happened. They didn't train the teachers, they didn't change the assessments. So COVID happened, the whole effort got put on freeze, but luckily, in a sense, AI happened because now it's adding all the more pressure on education to change what it teaches and how it teaches. Well, the reasons for the delay relate to the fact that our education system gets measured via end of studies exams like a bachillerato or a baccalaureate in France and so on. And those do not change easily. And if you don't change them, the teachers have, or the schools have no incentive to push for things that are not on the tests. The test basically decides what we teach because what we measure gets paid attention to. And so that's why nothing happened, and that's why that's one of the biggest problems we have to face. They're not architects and they're not general contractors. And so they're going to have to accept that over time, over the next 10 years, more and more of the content will be designed by specialists, well, the same way that books are designed by specialists, but courseware is going to be designed by specialists, curriculum designers, resident probably with jurisdictions, ministries and so on, and that teachers will need to contextualize the output. The reason why it's so difficult for them to do so is because they have to bring together essential content, core concepts, competencies, projects, various pedagogies and so on, formative assessments. It's impossible for any single person to do this the week before or the night before, and to do it at the right quality level. So 80% will be designed by the jurisdictions and 20% will be contextualized by the teacher for their classroom. What educators, on the other hand, can do is, once those systems are in place, make sure that they address the needs, the context of various populations. Someone living way deep in the Amazon is not going to have the same needs as someone living downtown Madrid. So that's what teachers have to be able to do, is contextualize education to various environments. Very often, issues of access, for instance, are a question of redistribution, right? It's a government that has to decide how much access it's going to give to people in remote areas. But also, you cannot expect that if you live in a remote area, you're going to have identical capabilities as someone who lives downtown a major city on top of a fiber optic node. The same way that you don't have the same types of stores in a small village as you have in a big city. So there's no way to have identical capabilities for everybody. I know it's an ideal, but it's just not economically, technically possible. So we have to live with these inequalities. The question is whether these are going to continue growing or not. Those are decisions made by government. Well, first of all, there's the policy role of governments to ensure proper use of AI across the population, not just in education, right? So that the AI systems that we deploy are, trained to be ethical, have guardrails, etc. That's a policy-making conversation that OECD and others are handling, UNESCO and others. What on the education side, it's a question of giving everyone sufficient access and training. So for instance, AI literacy for teachers. Every single teacher, for that matter, every single parent, should be AI literate. The same way that everybody knows how to drive a car, people should also know how to use AI. Of course, we're not asking anyone to become a mechanic or a mechanical engineer. We need them to know how to drive the car. Well, I think we see this all the time. I mean, look at Japan. It is very technologically advanced and it has a very strong culture. The two are not in competition with each other. I think it's more of a question of losing individual cognitive capabilities than it is necessarily about culture, about societal culture. Where we lose societal culture, in my opinion, has been more about social media losing a sense of ethics and careful and thoughtful and kind debate. With AI, you can also imagine a situation where thought processes become overly homogenized. Because if everybody uses the same AI and gets the same answer, then what's the differentiation? It's really your originality that's your differentiation. So whether we do or we don't, you're not going to see a visible difference. The problem of what we're talking about is that it's rather invisible. It's not like giving an object, a shiny laptop or iPad or whatever to a student. It's not something that politicians can point to and say, see, that's because I got the budget to fund this. It's very invisible. It's courseware. It's the difference between bad courseware and good courseware. And you're not going to see the effects for another 5, 10, 30 years. So politically, there's little reward in taking that risk. But for a country, it's absolutely necessary to make that change. And so if we don't do it, you're not going to see that difference in the classroom. I mean, you're going to see a few things like more or less projects, okay. But the real difference will be unemployment and social dissent, which we have started to see, of course, because for decades, education has not adapted to the needs of society and the needs of work.